I tried to check the man's profile, but the moment I did, a status window appeared before my eyes. There is too much information about this character. Converting to character summary. The data was overwhelming, and before I could even read it, I felt a sudden pressure around my neck. Someone grabbed me and lifted me off the ground with frightening strength. It was him, Yoo Joonghyuk, the regressor, the protagonist of 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, the man who had lived through the end of the world 3 times already, the living proof of the first method to survive this apocalypse. And now his hand was around my throat. As my vision blurred, my mind raced. This man, he's the one who would turn this world upside down. A barrier appeared around us, similar to the one that had trapped us back in the subway. I could hear confused voices beyond it, but I kept my eyes on Yoo Joonghyuk. His expression was cold and detached, like someone who had already given up on being human. He demanded my name, his voice sharp and filled with hostility. I could feel his suspicion. He didn't trust anyone, especially not me. When I told him my name, he only glared harder, as if trying to read me like an open book. Then, without warning, his fist slammed into my stomach. Pain exploded through me. He commented on how strong my body was and how he had already learned how to use coins efficiently. I could barely stand, but my thoughts were clear. He's already that strong after only clearing 1 main scenario? This was too early for him to be this powerful. I hoped this encounter wouldn't happen so soon. Of all people, Yoo Joonghyuk was the most dangerous existence in this world. After 3 regressions, he had long lost his humanity. He no longer hesitated to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. He struck me again, but I forced myself to smile. I know you, Yoo Joonghyuk. I had read every one of his 3,000 episodes. I had seen him rise, fall, rage, and break. He demanded that I show him respect, but I could sense the faintest trace of caution in his eyes. My words, my composure, it unsettled him. He didn't expect me to know who he was. To him, I must have seemed like a strange man who knew too much. But how could I not? To me, Yoo Joonghyuk was once a fictional character, someone who only existed in the lines of a novel. Yet now, he was here, alive and real, standing before me. I told him I used to be his fan. And it was true. I had admired him, hated him, pitied him, and rooted for him all at once. I was with him through all 3,000 chapters of his journey. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Nostalgia, maybe, even confusion. He said it had been a long time since anyone called themselves his fan, but that brief softness didn't last. He still wanted to know one thing: how I survived the subway. Of course he would ask that question. I had prepared for this question. I asked him if he'd let me live if I told him the truth. Deep down, I knew the answer. Yoo Joonghyuk wasn't the kind of person who showed mercy. I needed to choose my words carefully. Suddenly, a window appeared before my eyes. Personal skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has leveled up to level 2. I could now read deeper into Yoo Joonghyuk's thoughts. His mind was sharp, focused. He thought that only Han Myung-oh and Namwon Kim were supposed to survive that scenario, but Namwon was dead and others had lived instead. I could see his confusion, his realization that the future he remembered had changed. I smirked slightly. That's right, Yoo Joonghyuk. The world isn't following your script anymore. I told him that I cleared the scenario by killing the insects, that I had spotted the child, Lee Gi-young, after he fell during the explosion in the car ahead. That simple statement shook him. He thought back to his previous regressions, to how the survivors were supposed to be Namwon and Hyun-sung. Now everything was different. He wondered if my interference had changed the flow of fate itself.
He suspected that I was no ordinary survivor. His gaze hardened. He thought that I might have killed Numwon. To him, I was no longer just a helpful person. I was a potential threat. I told him calmly that we should move to Oksu Station, since time was running out. But instead of agreeing, his expression turned cold again. He activated his SS-grade skill, the Eye of the Sage. The air itself seemed to freeze. That skill was the highest form of detection. It could reveal everything about a person, even their hidden stats and secrets. But the moment he tried to look into me, something else activated. Personal skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint detects an external intrusion. A ripple ran through my body as the skill blocked his attempt. His eyes widened in shock. His all-seeing ability had been neutralized. I could see the disbelief in his face. Even the Eye of the Sage can't read me, he must have thought. The timer for the sub-scenario appeared again. 2 minutes and 14 seconds remaining.
I couldn't believe what had just happened. Even the Eye of the Sage, an SS-grade detection skill, had been completely blocked by my own ability. I didn't even know such a thing was possible. For a moment, I was just as shocked as Yoo Joonghyuk was. The fourth wall. It wasn't something I could fully understand, but it had saved me. But that victory came with a cost. The way Joonghyuk looked at me changed instantly. His killing intent sharpened like a blade against my skin. I could feel it. He had already decided that I was dangerous, maybe too dangerous to keep alive. I realized I had complicated things far too early. There was no way he would trust me now. If I wanted to survive, I had to change my plan. I needed an ally, a trustworthy one. Someone strong enough to survive until the later scenarios. Someone like Yoo Joonghyuk. There was no way I could clear Scenario 46 alone, and no one else in this world had the potential he did. When I mentioned the 46th scenario, I saw his eyes narrow. He was suspicious, confused at how I knew about something that far ahead. He must have wondered if I was also a regressor, but I wasn't. I simply told him the truth, that I could be of use to him. In his mind, I could sense doubt. If I truly were a regressor, he would have recognized me. But I wasn't repeating the past, I was rewriting it. I told him I knew the future that even he didn't know. And when he used his lie detection skill on me, it confirmed that I was telling the truth. His expression changed. For the first time, Yoo Joonghyuk looked uncertain. He was thinking about something. A prophet. In the world of 3 ways to survive the apocalypse, there was only one known person who could see the future, the prophet Anna Croft. The prophet attribute was unique, and only that ability could evade detection skills. To him, the possibility of another prophet existing in Korea was unthinkable. But now, standing before him, I had broken his understanding of how his world worked. He began to consider the implications. If I truly possessed foresight, then having me as an ally could change everything. For someone like him, who relied on repeating his life to predict the future, I was something new, a variable he couldn't calculate. I could see him weighing the risks. I knew I had to push further. I told him that he should take me as his companion, that I could help him fill the gaps in his knowledge of the future. For a man obsessed with certainty, the idea of having a prophet as his side was an irresistible bait. I could be his guide, his prophet, because in truth, I was the only reader of this story. For a moment, his lips curved into something between a smirk and a smile. He was thinking about how useful I could be, not just for Scenario 46, but for the battles that would come after. The name Zera flickered in his mind. I could tell he hadn't fully decided whether to trust me or kill me yet. But time was running out.
The timer for the sub-scenario was ticking. Only 50 seconds remained. 10 seconds later, I saw him make up his mind. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged me along. My body was exhausted, my vision fading, but relief surged through me. I had done it. I had convinced the regressor. As we crossed the Deus Ex Machina bridge of even numbers, I could see the others waiting. Yoo Song, Lee Gin-young, Lieutenant Lee Hyun-song. They looked confused and worried, probably wondering what had happened while I was gone. Yoo Joonghyuk didn't explain anything. He just dragged me forward like a piece of luggage. I was drained, mentally, emotionally, physically. The omniscient reader's viewpoint had deactivated from the strain. Anxiety gnawed at me, but I tried to stay calm. I had achieved what I needed. Yoo Joonghyuk was now my temporary ally. Whether he trusted me or not didn't matter. For now, I was alive. As we neared the end of the bridge, he stopped. I could feel his grip tighten slightly on my collar. My instinct screamed danger. He was about to test me again. He wanted to know if I truly was a prophet. He asked me to tell him something about his future. Every warning bell in my head went off. Something about the way he looked at me. It wasn't curiosity. It was the look of a man deciding whether to execute a threat. The serpents began to emerge from below the bridge, massive bodies coiling in the darkness. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to bluff my way through, but I knew Yoo Joonghyuk better than anyone. He was a psychopath driven by purpose, a man who would kill anyone if it meant protecting his version of the future. I steadied my breathing and told him the truth that mattered most. I wasn't his lackey. If we were going to work together, it had to be as equals. He needed to cooperate with me as much as I would with him. He didn't respond. I could sense his annoyance, but also something else. Acceptance. For a brief moment, I thought I had done it. That maybe, just maybe, I had earned a fragile kind of trust. I smiled, thinking the tension might ease. And then he let go. I fell. The world spun, and the next thing I saw was the gaping mouth of the serpent below. My body hit the water, swallowed by darkness. Above me, Yoo Joonghyuk's silhouette didn't move. His voice was calm, detached, as if delivering a verdict. A system notification appeared before my fading vision. You have failed to clear the sub-scenario. My mind went blank. Even as I sank into the cold abyss, one thought echoed inside me. So this is the kind of man Yoo Joonghyuk really is. And yet, despite everything, I couldn't help but smile. Because this wasn't the end. Not for me.
I was still alive, somehow. The world around me was dark and heavy, and every second felt like I was being crushed by the weight of the sea itself. My lungs burned, screaming for air, but I couldn't afford to breathe. Not here, not inside this monster. If I passed out now, it would all be over. I forced myself to stay conscious, struggling against the thick liquid that surrounded me. Eventually, my feet touched something solid, or soft, rather. Flesh. The stomach wall of the serpent. I switched on my flashlight, and the dim light cut through the darkness. The sight made my blood run cold. There were bodies, dozens of them, floating around me. Twisted, half-digested, stripped of life. The air was thick with acid and decay. I couldn't panic. Not now. I pressed my hand against the wall of flesh and tried to find a way out, anything that could lead me back to the surface. My mind wandered to Yoo Joonghyuk, that psychopath. He threw me in here without hesitation. But was it really just cruelty, or was this a test? It made sense. Yoo Joonghyuk never trusted anyone. He didn't have companions, only subordinates and enemies. Since his first regression, he had walked this world alone, revered as a savior and feared as a monster. He had lost count of how many people betrayed him, how many he had killed. Maybe to him, throwing me into the serpent was his way of measuring my worth. If I wanted to be treated as his equal, I had to survive. I had to prove that I was more than another disposable human. A notification flickered before my eyes. You have failed to clear the sub-scenario. My 100 coins were automatically deducted as a channel usage fee. The system was merciless. I scrolled through the endless status windows, each one cold and mechanical, but my mind was already planning ahead. The serpent began to move. The stomach shifted violently, and the water churned. I remembered the details from 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. The stomach of an ichthyosaur would begin secreting acid exactly 3 minutes after it swallowed its prey. That meant my time was almost up. And then that familiar mocking voice echoed inside the beast's gut. Bi-hyung, the Dakabai who oversaw my channel. His tone was annoyingly cheerful, as if he was watching a comedy show. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I told myself to stay calm. I had been waiting for this moment. If I could survive this, I wouldn't just escape. I would come out stronger, powerful enough to stand beside Yoo Joonghyuk as an equal. Then he would have no choice but to acknowledge me. Bi-hyung asked why I was still calm despite being swallowed alive. I told him I was waiting for him, because there was still something I needed from him: the coins. Since I failed the sub-scenario, the system would claim them as a penalty. He laughed, saying that coins weren't my life. If my life were truly at stake, the penalty would have said death instead of question marks in the message. That meant there was still a loophole, a negotiation point. He was impressed, I could tell. He didn't expect a human to reason like that. No wonder the constellations are watching you, he muttered. I could almost see his mischievous grin. Then he said I could buy my way out of failure with coins. The price, however, made my heart drop. 5,100 coins. That was outrageous. I didn't even have that much. He must have been joking or trying to see if I'd panic. But I refused to give him the satisfaction. I tried to negotiate, lowering my tone, but he immediately shut me down. If you can't pay, he sneered, then die. I stood up, soaked and trembling, but still smiling. I said, "Kill me." He froze for a moment, confused. I told myself silently, he wouldn't dare. Not here, not now. Because the constellations were watching. They were entertained. I was content they were laughing at my struggle. If he killed me too early, he'd lose his viewership. Bi-hyung's expression darkened. I could feel his irritation. I called him by his name, Bi-hyung, and asked how his streaming career was going. His face twisted in shock. He demanded to know how I knew that. I laughed, asking if the constellations had been stingy with their donations lately. His composure cracked. He shouted, "How can a mere human know this?" Notifications flashed before me. Several constellations had grown suspicious of my identity. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted.
I asked him to shut off the broadcast channel for a few minutes so we could talk privately. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. The stream cut off. The world went quiet. Then his voice came again, serious this time. He demanded to know how I knew about the star stream. The truth was simple. The star stream was the backbone of this world, the galactic broadcasting system that connected constellations and mortals alike. The Dakabais were streamers, entertainers feeding stories to the stars. The constellations were their audience, paying in coins for the blood and drama we provided. I took a step closer, my voice steady. I told him that I understood how this world worked, and then I offered him something. Don't you want to be the Dakabai king? Don't you want to surpass G or Dilted and become the greatest streamer in the galaxy? He didn't speak. The silence was enough to tell me I had his attention. I raised my hand and offered it to him. Let's make a contract, I said. Join me, Bi-hyung. I'll make you the Dakabai king.